Well, with that said, we're going to go from one comic book topic to another. And this all actually ties in together quite well. Martin Scorsese, legendary director, one of my favorite filmmakers ever. There is no doubt about that. He has made some of my favorite movies. If you don't know Martin Scorsese, he's directed iconic films like Taxi Driver, Goodfellas, The Departed, Wolf of Wall Street. I mean, the list goes on and on for what he has achieved in Hollywood. Academy Award winner, and again, legendary filmmaker. His status as an iconic filmmaker was cemented at least 30 years ago, right? So he's
like
been
late 70s.
Yeah, absolutely. He was already considered a trailblazer. And he actually has a movie coming out pretty soon called The Irishman, which is also starring Robert De Niro. Joe Pesci is coming out of retirement.
Legends.
And Al Pacino, which that will be their first collaboration ever, Al Pacino and Martin Scorsese. Yeah, kind of crazy. But anyway, we bring up Martin Scorsese because recently, my good man, this good director, went on the record to talk about Marvel movies specifically. And he said something really interesting, man. I'm going to go ahead and read the quote, and then we can just talk about it after that. So, Martin Scorsese, his quote about Marvel movies. I don't see them. I tried, but that's not cinema. Honestly, the closest I can think of them, as well made as they are, with actors doing the best they can under the circumstances, is theme parks. It isn't the cinema of human beings trying to convey emotional, psychological experiences to another human being. That's the end of the quote. Martin Scorsese. Essentially, the headline out of that, Marvel movies are not cinema. Where do we begin with that? How do we address that topic, man? What's to say about how do we feel about what Martin Scorsese said about Marvel movies in particular?
Man, you know what's crazy to me? It's like all the best artists and filmmakers and producers, or all the greatest artists in the world, always say or do something that's either one you don't agree with completely. I was about to say stupid.
well,
or like they just have some point of view that makes no sense. And this is one of those things.
Yeah,
this is like a Kanye, why the hell did you say that kind of moment? You know what I mean? Like,
for sure.
Like Martin Scorsese, you literally write movies. You're a movie head.
Yeah.
And for you to know what it takes to make a movie, to say one of the biggest franchise of all time is not cinema is insane to me. For starters, right?
Yeah. I have several thoughts about this. I think initially when I saw it, when I literally read it for the first time, I said, well, of course he said that. It's Martin Scorsese. He's a 76-year-old white man. Yeah. What do you expect him to say, right? He's never made a movie until The Irishman. He's never made a movie that's costed like triple digits in the hundreds of millions, right? He's never made, even like $1 billion at the box office, but that's not the testament to his genius. Like, obviously we know he's a legend and he's a genius, and he makes very specific types of movies, right? Movies that definitely tackle the human condition and psychological experiences and emotional experiences and backstories and histories and legacies and all these different topics and themes. That man has nothing to prove. Again, one of the greatest filmmakers ever. But when I saw the quote, I said, well, of course he said that. Like, he cannot relate to superhero movies. He's not the target demographic. So when I saw it, I was like, oh, I'm not surprised. And honestly, why do we care? Like, why do we care about what Martin Scorsese thinks about superhero movies, right? Like, so it doesn't validate how well they perform. Obviously, like you mentioned, biggest franchise, Marvel, specifically biggest franchise ever. The numbers don't lie. So clearly, much of the world enjoys these movies and considers them to be, cinema, whether it be blockbuster cinema or small, intimate, psychological cinema, whatever. But then I did start thinking about it and the fact that, okay, Scorsese is a legend, right?
Right.
Hugely influential in Hollywood. A lot of people look up to him.
For sure.
A lot of people have consumed his movies and think he's made some of the greatest films ever.
Yes.
And then I started thinking about specifically the line, Marvel movies not being cinema. And I thought instantly about the thousands and thousands and thousands of people that work on these movies day by day by day. I can't even imagine what it's like to make one of these. And just
how many people are on set?
All of that. Making a good movie is incredibly difficult. It is not easy.
Right.
If you've done any research about this or if you've ever been exposed to this, it is an incredibly difficult thing. And there are thousands of jobs at stake. There are hundreds of millions of dollars at stake. You know, and it's like, okay, yeah, boo-hoo, big movie studio. Like, yeah, you'll lose money, but so what? Like, but at the end of the day, like, people put tons of work and effort and blood, sweat, and tears into these things. And then to have somebody who I think a lot of people that work on these different things probably look up to, all of a sudden say like, yeah, what you work on is not cinema. Then I started thinking about that and I was like, that's crazy.
That's disrespectful.
Yeah.
Honestly. Like imagine Martin Scorsese looking the Russo brothers in the eyes and telling them Endgame and Infinity War is not cinema. Like imagine that exchange. Like they're both in the same room and he says that to them. You know how disrespectful that sounds?
Yeah, the fact that they committed 7 years of their lives, uninterrupted, by the way, 7 years of their lives to make these movies and to make them as great as they could possibly make them.
Ridiculous.
Right? They could make big, thunderous, enjoyable fan entertainment, and to have somebody just tell you like, yeah, that's not cinema. Like that's a certain type of movie, but it's not what I consider cinema, right? That was crazy. And I mean, you know, so there was a reaction to that. So Samuel L. Jackson, who plays Nick Fury in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think it's quite appropriate that he's the one who's responded, considering he has been in a Martin Scorsese movie. If you didn't know, he was in Goodfellas, albeit for
he was in Goodfellas.
2 minutes. Got shot and killed way too early. But he was in Goodfellas. So, I mean, he's been in a Martin Scorsese picture. Samuel L. Jackson, he was at the premiere the grand opening for Tyler Perry Studios in Atlanta. And he was asked by Variety, you know, what his thoughts about the quote were. And this was Sam Jackson's response. I mean, that's like saying Bugs Bunny ain't funny. Films are films. Everybody doesn't like his stuff either. There are a lot of Italian Americans that don't think he should be making films about them like that. Everybody's got an opinion. So, I mean, it's okay. Ain't nobody going to stop making movies.
True.
Which I couldn't have said it better myself,
True.
Right? Like, people are still going to make these movies. Superhero movies will continue to come out and dominate the box office every single year. We'll still continue to get 9, 10, 11 of them a year because that's what people want to see.
That's what people want to see.
You know, and why is it so bad? I don't understand. You know, I think sometimes we get critics or people with different trade publications. They talk about superhero fatigue and we get too much of this and we don't get enough of that. And, you know, superhero movies are to blame for this, but I don't understand what's so bad about giving people what they want. Right? Like if people continuously show up for these movies, they obviously like them. They please a large portion of the audience, the movie-going audience. Of course, they're going to keep delivering that to us. And what's the problem with that? Shouldn't we want that?
Yeah, especially what a lot of people don't realize with comic book movies is there are thousands and thousands and thousands of comic books.
Yeah.
So imagine you having a favorite comic book and all but that one comic book has been brought to the big screen, right?
Right.
And so it's like, that's why they keep making them, so we can make everyone happy in a way, which is great to me. Like, why would you not be on board for that? No matter who you are, if you don't like them, just don't go see them. You know what I mean?
It's that simple, right?
It's that easy.
It's plenty of other movies. I mean, we've had the conversation, you know, sort of, you know, in person, just like personal time, just like talking about there are many, many original movies being made. There are so many, but people don't go see them, right? Which many different factors. I'm not blaming anybody, but obviously the big superhero stuff, if people want to go pay for these at the movie theater, great. And like you said, there's so many stories to tell, thousands and thousands of comic books coming, you know, from 80 years of history.
Boy.
It's not slowing down anytime soon.
Oh no. In fact, I think it might be going back up.
Yeah,
I think
picking back
comics,
up again,
comics, the actual physical comic book.
Oh, the medium. The comic book medium.
The comic book medium is going back up.
Yeah.
And part of that is because what's going on in cinema right now.
True. Yeah, the popularity is definitely resurging. I mean, it's getting there. So I don't, you know, if people think there's superhero fatigue or comic book movie fatigue, I mean, I'm sorry. Again, like if you don't like it, just don't go see it. To Martin Scorsese, I mean, again, I'm not surprised by what you said, but also kind of disappointed that, you know, in a sense, like what you said, it kind of discredits what a lot of people put a lot of work and time into. And I mean, it's given, people don't think about the impact of comic book movies and the fact that, like, if we're being honest, even beyond the people that directly work on these movies, how it's created an entire new industry in a sense. Like, if you look at YouTube, and the popularity of YouTube, you look at all the different channels that do theories, this podcast that we're doing right now, people that do videos breaking down different, you know, movies and all of the different stuff, like, that popularity started, you know, a digital revolution too. You
cultural
know,
shift.
A cultural shift. Like, a lot of, you know, startup companies, they sort of piggybacked off of the success of superhero movies to start their own platforms, right? You know, so they're in a sense, they're also kind of, you know, indirect employees of all of this, right? That put in a lot of work and time and effort into this stuff. And I don't think people think about that, like, all the time. I mean, that's just, again, man, like, I don't understand why we got to come down on stuff that people obviously want to see and take part.
You know, it kind of feels like a baby boomer thing, where, like, imagine there's somebody's, like, dad out there, right, who hears a rap song and goes, "That's not music."
That's true.
You know what I mean? They're like, "That's not music.
That's not music."
Somebody put on some Luther Vandross or something, right? And it's I think that's kind of the same idea. And it's like one of those things where it's like, you're going to ignore your dad, but you know what I mean? Still listen to rap music, but also it's another thing that your pops might not realize, that hip hop music is like the biggest export in America.
Man.
Right?
Yeah.
And
huge.
That's kind of the same idea of, like, Martin Scorsese, right? He's saying it's not cinema, but everything else around it is telling you wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the numbers are there to prove you wrong. The reactions, everything.
Same when Steven Spielberg got mad about Netflix movies.
Right.
Steven Spielberg was like, "Netflix movies are not movies." We're like, they do the only thing they don't do is put it in the movie theater.
Yeah.
The same production.
That's the only difference, yeah.
Maybe some of their budgets are lower because they have to be. You know what I mean? But they do the exact same thing in any other movie. There's a director, there's actors, there's people who do costumes, there's cameramen, there's all this. And they're still movies. And they deserve to win Oscars just as much as anybody else, and Emmys.
If you are directing, producing, writing, scoring, shooting, designing a movie, an experience that's being put on film, fuck it, that is a movie.
That's a movie.
I'm sorry.
That's a movie.
I don't care if it's your grad school thesis, short film, or if it's Avengers Endgame. That's cinema.
Cinema. That's what it is. It's literally what it is. If you go to most film festivals, that's what's going to be playing. Honestly, there's a bunch of short films that people literally do all those things you just said. And the movie could cost $10.
Yeah,
and it's blood, sweat, and tears. It's still a movie.
Yeah,
it could be the worst movie in the world. It could be anything. It's still a movie. It's still cinema.
Ooh, shit, I'm actually getting emotional being a filmmaker myself. Like, you just don't know, you know, how much goes into that process. So
much.
Yeah. I'm going to just say, do better, Martin Scorsese. That's how I'm going to
that's it.
wrap that up.